Maya Rodriguez works as a food delivery driver in Manhattan to support her sick mother and pay for her interrupted law degree. When she delivers an order to tech billionaire Alexander Sterling's penthouse, a misunderstanding leads to a humiliating encounter that changes both their lives forever. What starts as a clash between two different worlds becomes a story of resilience, hidden truths, and the power of never giving up on your dreams. The rain hammered against Maya's motorcycle helmet as she weaved through Manhattan traffic, the smell of Chinese takeout filling the small delivery box strapped to her back. Her phone buzzed with another notification, another delivery, another $5 tip if she was lucky. She glanced at the address on her screen, Penthouse 4A, Sterling Tower, Upper East Side. Maya's heart sank slightly. Rich people were always the worst tippers, and penthouse deliveries meant dealing with doormen who looked at her like she was carrying the plague instead of someone's dinner. But the order was massive, nearly $200 worth of food from Golden Dragon, one of the most expensive Chinese restaurants in the city. Maybe, just maybe, this would be different. She pulled up to the gleaming 40-story tower, its glass facade reflecting the city lights like a beacon of wealth she could never touch. The doorman, a stern-faced man in his 50s, barely glanced up from his newspaper as she approached. "Delivery for Sterling, Penthouse 4A, Maya said, shaking the rain from her jacket. The doorman's eyes traveled from her soaked sneakers to her weather-beaten helmet, lingering on the grease stain on her delivery company shirt. "Service elevator is around back," he muttered without making eye contact. Maya bit back her response. She was used to this treatment, but it never stopped stinging. 3 years ago, she had been walking through the halls of Columbia Law School, her future bright and certain. Now she was being directed to service elevators like she was invisible. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt endless. Maya stared at her reflection in the polished steel doors. Her dark hair was a mess from the helmet, her uniform wrinkled, and exhaustion was written across her face. She had been working 14-hour days for months, splitting time between deliveries and her night job at a diner. Sleep was a luxury she couldn't afford. When the elevator doors opened, Maya stepped into a world that might as well have been on another planet. The penthouse was bigger than her entire apartment building, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Central Park. Modern art hung on the walls, each piece probably worth more than she made in a year. The marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers that cast rainbow patterns across the space. "Hello?" Maya called out, her voice echoing in the vast space. "Food delivery." She heard footsteps approaching, expensive leather shoes on marble. When Alexander Sterling appeared from around a corner, Maya's breath caught in her throat. She recognized him immediately from the business magazines and news articles. At 32, he was one of the youngest billionaires in tech, known for his revolutionary social media platform that had changed how the world connected. He was tall, with sharp features and dark hair that looked like it had been professionally styled even at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. But what struck Maya wasn't his wealth or his magazine cover looks. It was the exhaustion in his eyes that mirrored her own. "Finally," Alexander said, not looking up from his phone. "I've been waiting for an hour. Do you have any idea how much my time is worth?" Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks, but she kept her voice professional. "I'm sorry for the delay, sir. The restaurant was backed up and the rain made traffic. I don't need excuses." Alexander cut her off, still typing on his phone. "Just give me the food and go." Maya set the bags on his marble kitchen island, her hands trembling slightly with suppressed anger. She pulled out the receipt, doing quick math in her head. The total was $187.50, and there was no tip included in the app payment. She waited, hoping he would add something when he signed. Alexander glanced at the receipt and signed it without adding anything extra. "That'll be all," he said dismissively. Maya stared at the receipt in disbelief. No tip on a nearly $200 order that she had delivered in a thunderstorm. She thought about her mother's medical bills, about the $60 electric bill she couldn't pay until her next shift, about the ramen noodles she'd been eating for dinner for the past week. "Excuse me, sir," Maya said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "I just wanted to confirm, there's no tip included in this order." Alexander finally looked up from his phone, his eyes cold and annoyed. "Tip? You're a delivery driver. You get paid to deliver food. That's your job." "Yes, sir, but the industry standard..." "Industry standard?" Alexander laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Listen, sweetheart, you're just a delivery girl. You bring food from point A to point B. It's not exactly rocket science. Maybe instead of expecting handouts, you should focus on getting a real job." The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She felt her face flush with humiliation and rage, but something deeper stirred inside her, a fierce pride that refused to be crushed by this man's casual cruelty. "You're right," Maya said quietly, her voice taking on a tone that made Alexander finally look at her directly. "I am just a delivery girl, but do you know what else I am?" Alexander raised an eyebrow, clearly expecting some sob story he could dismiss. Maya straightened her shoulders, and when she spoke, her voice carried a strength that seemed to fill the enormous room. "I'm a third-year law student at Columbia University, currently on academic leave. I have a 3.8 GPA, and I was ranked 5th in my class before I had to suspend my studies. I speak 3 languages fluently, and I've been published in the Columbia Law Review twice." Alexander's expression began to shift, but Maya wasn't finished. "I'm also a daughter who works 80 hours a week to pay for her mother's chemotherapy treatments because our insurance doesn't cover experimental drugs. I'm someone who hasn't bought herself new clothes in 2 years because every penny I earn goes to keeping the only family I have left alive. I'm a woman who gets up every day at 5 a.m. and doesn't stop moving until midnight, not because I lack ambition or intelligence, but because sometimes life forces you to choose between your dreams and the people you love." The penthouse fell silent except for the sound of rain against the windows. Alexander's phone had gone quiet in his hand, and for the first time since Maya had arrived, he was looking at her, really looking at her. "And yes," Maya continued, her voice now steady and clear, "right now I'm a delivery girl, but I'm not just anything. I'm someone who takes pride in honest work, who treats every job with dignity, and who doesn't look down on people because of how they make their living. I'm someone who understands that respect isn't about how much money you have. It's about how you treat the people around you, especially those who can't do anything for you in return." Alexander opened his mouth as if to say something, but Maya held up her hand. "I don't need your tip, Mr. Sterling. I don't need your money or your approval. But what I won't accept is being dismissed as if my struggles, my education, my sacrifices and my dreams don't matter, just because I'm standing in your kitchen wearing a delivery uniform instead of a designer suit." Maya folded the receipt and tucked it into her pocket. She turned to leave, then paused at the kitchen island. "You know what the saddest part is?" she said softly. "I actually admired you. I read about your company, about how you started with nothing and built something that connects people across the world. I thought you understood what it meant to work for something. But sitting in your ivory tower, you've forgotten that every person who serves you, every delivery driver, every doorman, every cleaner, they're fighting battles you can't even imagine, and they deserve better than being made to feel small by someone who should know better." As Maya walked toward the elevator, she heard Alexander's voice behind her, quiet and uncertain. "Wait." But Maya didn't turn around. She stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the ground floor, leaving behind the glittering penthouse and the man who had tried to diminish her, but had instead witnessed something he had clearly never seen before, someone who refused to be broken by his words. As the elevator descended, Maya felt tears threatening to spill, but they weren't tears of shame or defeat. They were tears of exhaustion, of frustration, of a young woman who was tired of having to prove her worth to a world that seemed determined to overlook her. But beneath it all was something stronger, a reminder of who she really was, regardless of the uniform she wore or the job she did to survive. When Maya reached the lobby, the doorman looked up from his newspaper. Something in her expression must have changed, because his dismissive attitude softened slightly. "Everything all right, miss?" he asked. Maya paused, considering the question. Was everything all right? Her mother was still sick, her bank account was still nearly empty, and she still had 3 more deliveries to make before her shift ended. But something had shifted upstairs. Something important. "It will be," Maya said, and for the first time in months she actually believed it. Alexander Sterling stood frozen in his penthouse kitchen for a full 10 minutes after Maya left, staring at the spot where she had delivered her devastating speech. The Chinese food sat cooling on his marble counter, but he had completely lost his appetite. Her words echoed in his mind, each sentence hitting harder than the last. "You've forgotten that every person who serves you, they're fighting battles you can't even imagine." He walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, pressing his palm against the cool glass. 40 floors below, he could see tiny figures hurrying through the rain-soaked streets, each one with their own story, their own struggles. When had he stopped seeing them as people? Alexander's phone buzzed with another urgent message from his board of directors. His company's stock had dropped 3 points that day, following rumors about a potential lawsuit. Investors were nervous, competitors were circling, and his carefully built empire felt more fragile than ever. But for the first time in months, those problems seemed distant compared to the shame burning in his chest. He thought about Maya's words. "I actually admired you. I thought you understood what it meant to work for something." The truth was, he had forgotten. Somewhere between his first billion and his penthouse lifestyle, he had lost touch with the young man who had coded for 18 hours straight in a cramped studio apartment, surviving on pizza and determination. Alexander pulled out his phone and called his assistant, Jennifer. "Mr. Sterling, it's late. Is everything okay?" Jennifer's voice was concerned. "Jen, I need you to find out everything you can about Maya Rodriguez. She's a delivery driver for... I don't know the company, but she just delivered from Golden Dragon. She's a law student at Columbia." There was a pause. "Sir, is there a problem? Should I contact security?" No problem. Just find her, okay? I need to talk to her." After hanging up, Alexander sat heavily on his leather couch, surrounded by the trappings of success that suddenly felt hollow. He picked up the business magazine from his coffee table, the one with his face on the cover under the headline, "The Genius Who Revolutionized Social Connection." The irony wasn't lost on him. He had built a platform that connected billions of people worldwide, yet he had just treated another human being as invisible. Meanwhile, Maya was 3 blocks away, delivering her next order to a small apartment building in Hell's Kitchen. The customer, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, greeted her with a warm smile and pressed a $5 bill into her hand despite Maya's protests. "You look tired, dear," Mrs. Chen said in her gentle, accented English. "Are you eating enough?" The kindness in her voice nearly broke Maya's composure. After the humiliation at Sterling Tower, this simple human connection felt like a lifeline. "I'm okay, Mrs. Chen. Thank you for asking." "My grandson is your age," the elderly woman continued. "He works 2 jobs too, saving money for school. It's hard, but you young people are strong. Don't let anyone make you feel small for doing honest work." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. If only Mrs. Chen knew how perfectly timed those words were. Back in her small studio apartment at 1 a.m., Maya finally allowed herself to break down. She sat on the edge of her narrow bed, looking at the stack of medical bills on her nightstand and the acceptance letter from Columbia Law School pinned to her wall, a reminder of the dreams she had put on hold. Her mother, Elena, was sleeping fitfully in the bed they shared, her breathing labored from the chemotherapy. Maya watched her chest rise and fall, remembering the vibrant woman who had raised her alone after her father left when Maya was 12. Eleanor had worked as a seamstress for 30 years, never complaining, always believing her daughter would achieve great things. "I'm sorry, Mama," Maya whispered in Spanish. "I'm sorry I can't give you better than this." She pulled out her laptop, a second-hand model she had bought 3 years ago, and opened her unfinished law school applications. She had been accepted to several internships before having to leave school, including one at a prestigious firm that specialized in corporate law. The irony struck her. She could have been sitting across from men like Alexander Sterling in boardrooms instead of delivering their dinner. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from her manager at the delivery company. "Great job tonight, Maya. You're one of our most reliable drivers. Keep it up." She stared at the message, thinking about Alexander's dismissive words. "You're just a delivery girl." Why did society measure worth by job titles instead of character? Her work fed people, provided a service, required skill to navigate the city safely. There was honor in that, regardless of what people like Alexander Sterling thought. The next morning, Maya was surprised to receive a call from an unknown number. "Is this Maya Rodriguez?" The voice was professional, female. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Jennifer Walsh. I work for Sterling Enterprises. Mr. Sterling would like to meet with you to discuss your conversation yesterday evening." Maya felt her stomach drop. "Did I do something wrong? Am I being sued?" "Oh no, nothing like that. Mr. Sterling simply wants to apologize and speak with you further. Would you be available this afternoon?" Maya's first instinct was to refuse. She had said everything she needed to say to Alexander Sterling, but curiosity won out. What could the billionaire possibly want with her? That afternoon, Maya found herself back at Sterling Tower, but this time she was directed to the main elevator instead of the service entrance. The doorman even held the door for her, though she was wearing the same delivery uniform as the night before. Alexander's office occupied half of the 20th floor, with a view that stretched to the Hudson River. When Maya entered, she found him standing with his back to her, looking out at the city below. "Thank you for coming," he said without turning around. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," Maya replied honestly. "What do you want, Mr. Sterling?" Alexander finally turned to face her. He looked different somehow, less polished, more human. His expensive suit was wrinkled and there were dark circles under his eyes. "I want to apologize. What I said last night was inexcusable." Maya crossed her arms. "Apology noted. Is that all?" "No." Alexander gestured to a chair. "Please sit. I need to tell you something." Reluctantly, Maya sat down. Alexander remained standing, running his hands through his hair. "After you left last night, I couldn't stop thinking about what you said, about how I've forgotten what it means to work for something. You were right. Mr. Sterling, please, let me finish." Alexander's voice was urgent. 12 years ago, I was living in a studio apartment in Queens that was smaller than this office bathroom. I was 20 years old, a college dropout with a crazy idea about connecting people online. I worked as a night janitor to pay rent while I coded during the day. I ate cereal for dinner because I couldn't afford anything else. Maya watched him carefully, unsure where this was going. The night janitor job was at a tech company in Manhattan. Every morning I would empty the trash cans of executives who made more in a day than I made in a month. They never looked at me, never acknowledged my existence. I was invisible to them. Alexander sat down across from Maya, his expression vulnerable in a way she hadn't expected. One night, one of those executives was working late. He saw me emptying his trash and said something that I've never forgotten. "At least you know your place in the world, kid. Some people aren't cut out for bigger things." Maya felt her anger softening slightly, but she remained guarded. "I promised myself that when I made it, I would never treat people the way he treated me. I would remember where I came from." Alexander's voice grew quiet. "Somewhere along the way, I became exactly what I hated. I became him." The office fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of traffic far below. "Last night, when you told me about your mother, about your sacrifices, about your dreams, I saw myself 12 years ago. But more than that, I saw what I should have remained. Someone who understands that success isn't just about what you achieve, but about how you treat others along the way." Maya studied his face, looking for signs of manipulation or calculated charm. Instead, she saw something she recognized from her own mirror, genuine remorse and exhaustion. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked softly. Alexander leaned forward. "Because I want to make this right. Not just the apology, but I want to help. Your mother's treatment, your school." "No." Maya stood up abruptly. "Absolutely not. I don't need your charity." "It's not charity," Alexander said quickly. "Let me finish, please. My company has an internship program for law students. It pays well, offers flexible hours, and provides experience in corporate law. You would earn the position. I've already looked up your academic record. You're more than qualified." Maya stared at him, speechless. "I'm not offering you a handout," Alexander continued. "I'm offering you an opportunity. What you do with it is entirely up to you." For the first time since entering his office, Maya allowed herself to consider the possibility. An internship at Sterling Enterprises would be a dream opportunity under normal circumstances. But these weren't normal circumstances. "I need time to think about it," Maya said finally. Alexander nodded. "Of course. Take all the time you need." As Maya turned to leave, Alexander called out to her. "Maya?" She looked back. "Thank you for reminding me who I used to be. If this part also touched your heart, tell me from which place in the world you're listening to this story. Sometimes, the most powerful changes begin with the courage to see ourselves clearly, no matter how uncomfortable that reflection might be." Maya spent 3 sleepless nights wrestling with Alexander's offer. She paced the small confines of her studio apartment, weighing pride against pragmatism, while her mother slept fitfully beside her. The internship at Sterling Enterprises represented everything she had dreamed of, a chance to return to law, financial stability, and a future that extended beyond endless delivery routes through Manhattan traffic. But accepting felt like admitting defeat, like proving that she needed rescuing from her circumstances. On Thursday morning, Eleanor woke up coughing violently. Maya rushed to her side, helping her sit up and offering water. Her mother's face was pale, and the dark circles under her eyes had deepened since starting the latest round of chemotherapy. "Mija," Elena whispered in Spanish, her voice raspy. "You look tired. Are you eating enough?" Maya forced a smile, the same question Mrs. Chen had asked her days earlier. "I'm fine, Mama. How are you feeling?" Elena studied her daughter's face with the intuitive wisdom only mothers possessed. "Something is troubling you. What is it?" Maya hesitated, then sat on the edge of the bed. She had told her mother about the humiliating encounter with Alexander Sterling, but not about his subsequent offer. Elena had raised Maya to be proud and self-sufficient, never to depend on others for what they could achieve themselves. "I received a job offer," Maya said carefully, "an internship at a law firm. It would pay well and give me experience in corporate law." Elena's eyes brightened for the first time in weeks. "That's wonderful news. When do you start?" "I haven't accepted it yet." "Why not?" Maya struggled to explain without revealing the complicated circumstances. "It feels complicated, like maybe I don't deserve it." Elena reached out and took her daughter's hand, her grip surprisingly strong despite her illness. "Listen to me, Maya Rodriguez. You graduated summa cum laude from your undergraduate program. You scored in the top 5% on the LSAT. You were accepted to Columbia Law School with a partial scholarship. You didn't suspend your studies because you couldn't handle the work. You suspended them to take care of me." Tears burned Maya's eyes. "Mama, no, let me finish." Elena's voice grew stronger. "For 2 years you've worked yourself to exhaustion to pay for my treatments. You've sacrificed your youth, your social life, your dreams, all for an old woman who should be taking care of you instead of the other way around. You're not old, and you're my mother. This is what family does." Elena smiled sadly. "Yes, it is. But family also means accepting help when it's offered, especially when that help can change your life. If someone recognizes your worth and wants to invest in your future, that's not charity, Mija. That's justice." That afternoon, Maya found herself standing outside the Columbia Law School library, watching students hurry between classes with armloads of casebooks. She recognized some faces from her cohort, classmates who had continued their studies while she had been forced to step away. They looked confident, purposeful, still connected to the academic world that had once felt like home. Maya pulled out her phone and scrolled through her old law school emails, finding messages from professors who had praised her work and classmates who had invited her to study groups she could never attend because of her work schedule. One email, from Professor Martinez, who taught constitutional law, stood out. "Maya, I hope you know that your contributions to our discussions on equal protection were among the most insightful I've heard from any student. When you're ready to return, you'll pick up exactly where you left off. Excellence doesn't fade, it waits." Reading those words now, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. Maybe accepting Alexander's offer wasn't about swallowing her pride. Maybe it was about reclaiming her future. Meanwhile, Alexander was in his office, dealing with the biggest crisis Sterling Enterprises had faced since going public. The threatened lawsuit had materialized. A former business partner was claiming that Alexander had stolen proprietary technology in the early days of the company. The accusations were false, but proving it would require extensive legal documentation from Sterling's founding period. "Sir, we need those early contracts and correspondence files," his head legal counsel David Kim explained during an emergency meeting. "The problem is a lot of those documents weren't digitized. They're in physical storage, and frankly, they're a mess. We need someone detail-oriented who can work through thousands of pages of documents." Alexander nodded absently, his mind still partially focused on whether Maya would accept his offer. He had told Jennifer to keep the internship position open indefinitely, much to HR's confusion. "How long do we have?" Alexander asked. "The discovery phase starts in 6 weeks. If we can't produce those documents in an organized, searchable format, it's going to look very bad for us in court." That evening, Maya made her decision. She called the number Jennifer had given her. "Jennifer Walsh speaking. Hi, this is Maya Rodriguez. I would like to accept Mr. Sterling's internship offer." "Wonderful. Can you start Monday morning?" Maya felt a surge of nervous excitement. "Yes, I can start Monday." "Excellent. You'll be working directly with our legal department on a major project. I'll email you all the details and building access information." After hanging up, Maya looked around her tiny apartment with new eyes. For the first time in 2 years, she allowed herself to imagine a different future, one where she could support her mother without working 18-hour days, where she could return to school, where her dreams didn't feel like impossible luxuries. Elena, who had been listening from the bed, smiled broadly. "I'm proud of you, Mija. Your father would be proud too." It was the first time Elena had mentioned Maya's father in years. He had left when Maya was 12, unable to handle the responsibility of a family. His absence had made Maya fiercely independent, determined never to rely on anyone the way her mother had relied on him. "Do you really think so?" Maya asked. "I know so. You're nothing like him, Maya. You don't run from challenges. You face them head-on. This job isn't running away from your principles, it's running toward your destiny." Monday morning arrived gray and drizzling. typical for November in New York. Maya stood outside Sterling Tower at 7:45 a.m., wearing her one professional outfit, a navy blue suit she had bought for law school interviews 3 years earlier. It was slightly tight now, and the hem of the skirt had come loose, but she had spent an hour that morning making sure it looked as presentable as possible. The same doorman who had directed her to the service elevator less than a week earlier now greeted her with professional courtesy. "Good morning, miss. Are you here for Sterling Enterprises?" "Yes, I'm Maya Rodriguez. I'm starting an internship today." "Excellent. Take the main elevator to the 22nd floor, legal department." As the elevator climbed, Maya's stomach churned with nervous energy. She was about to enter a world she had only dreamed of accessing, working alongside lawyers who had graduated from the same schools, but had never had to choose between their education and their family's survival. The legal department occupied an entire floor, with glass-walled conference rooms and offices lined with law books. Maya was greeted by David Kim, the head counsel, who looked harried but welcoming. "Maya Rodriguez, I'm David Kim. Welcome to Sterling Enterprises. I understand you're a Columbia law student." "Yes, sir, currently on academic leave, but I'm planning to return next fall." David's expression brightened. "Excellent. We have a project that's perfect for someone with your academic background. Come, let me show you what you'll be working on." He led Maya to a conference room that had been converted into a document processing center. Tables were covered with boxes of papers, and several computer workstations had been set up with scanning equipment. "This is 12 years of company documents from our founding through our IPO, David explained. "Contracts, correspondence, meeting notes, financial records, everything. We need it all digitized, organized, and searchable for a legal case we're defending." Maya looked at the mountain of paperwork, estimating thousands of documents. "How much time do we have?" 6 weeks. "I know it seems overwhelming, but you won't be working alone. We have 2 other legal assistants on the project and temporary staff to help with scanning." As David continued explaining the project details, Maya felt a familiar energy building inside her, the same feeling she used to get in law school when presented with a challenging case study. This wasn't just busy work, it was detective work, puzzle solving, the kind of analytical thinking she had missed desperately. "One more thing," David added as he prepared to leave. "Mr. Sterling specifically requested that you lead this project. He said you have excellent attention to detail." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. She wondered what else Alexander had told his legal team about her background. But as she looked around the room full of important documents that could determine the fate of a billion-dollar company, she realized something profound. She belonged here, not because of Alexander's intervention, but because she had the skills, intelligence, and determination to excel at this work. For the first time in 2 years, Maya Rodriguez felt like herself again. What comes next is even stronger. And to not miss how Maya's first week unfolds in the corporate world, tap the subscribe button now. It's free, and you'll be with me in every new story that shows how courage can transform everything. Maya's first week at Sterling Enterprises passed in a blur of legal documents, coffee-fueled late nights, and the intoxicating feeling of using her mind in ways she had almost forgotten were possible. She arrived at the office before 7 a.m. and rarely left before 9 p.m. But unlike her delivery job, the exhaustion felt purposeful, meaningful. The document organization project was more complex than anyone had initially realized. 12 years of paperwork told the story of a company's evolution from a scrappy startup to a global powerhouse. But the early records were chaotic. Contracts were misfiled, correspondence was scattered across different boxes, and financial records were often incomplete or duplicated. Maya had developed a systematic approach that impressed even David Kim. She created a detailed tracking system, cross-referenced documents by date and topic, and identified gaps in the record that might prove problematic in court. Her 2 colleagues, Jennifer Park and Marcus Williams, both recent law graduates from Ivy League schools, initially seemed skeptical of working under someone who hadn't completed her degree. But Maya's thoroughness and insight quickly earned their respect. "How did you catch that discrepancy?" Jennifer asked on Thursday afternoon, looking over Maya's shoulder at a contract from 2013. "I've read this document 3 times and missed it completely." Maya pointed to a clause buried in the middle of the contract. "The signature date here doesn't match the execution date referenced in paragraph 12. It's a small inconsistency, but if the plaintiff's lawyers notice it, they could argue the contract was backdated." Marcus whistled low. "That's the kind of detail that could save the case. You have a good eye for this stuff." Maya felt a warm glow of professional validation, something she hadn't experienced since law school. But her satisfaction was complicated by the knowledge that Alexander Sterling had specifically requested her for this project. Was she succeeding on her own merits, or was she being given special treatment? That question was answered on Friday afternoon, when she made a discovery that would change everything. Maya was working through a box of correspondence from 2014 when she found a folder labeled Confidential Partnership Discussions. Inside were email printouts and handwritten notes from meetings between Alexander and Marcus Chen, the former business partner now suing Sterling Enterprises for theft of intellectual property. As Maya read through the documents, a chill ran down her spine. The papers revealed that Chen had indeed developed some of the foundational technology that Sterling's platform was built on. But more disturbing were Chen's own words, documented in email exchanges, showing his intent to patent the technology secretly and then demand ownership of the entire company once it became successful. In one particularly damning email from Chen to an associate, he wrote, "Sterling doesn't understand the legal implications of what we're building. Once we have users, I'll reveal my patents and take controlling interest. He's too trusting to see it coming." Maya sat back in her chair, stunned. This wasn't just evidence that would help Sterling Enterprises defend against the lawsuit. It was proof of a conspiracy to defraud Alexander from the very beginning of his company. But as Maya continued reading, she found something even more shocking. The final document in the folder was a handwritten note from Alexander, dated just weeks before Chen left the partnership. "I know what Marcus is planning. Jennifer found copies of the patent applications in his desk. I could destroy him legally, but that's not who I want to be. I'll find another way to protect what we've built. Maybe someday he'll realize that betraying trust costs more than any amount of money." Maya stared at the note, her understanding of Alexander Sterling shifting once again. He had known about Chen's betrayal for years, but had chosen not to retaliate, even when it would have been legally justified. Instead, he had quietly developed workarounds and alternatives, protecting his company without destroying the man who had tried to destroy him. The conference room door opened, and David Kim walked in, looking stressed. "Maya, how's the document review going? The plaintiff's lawyers are pushing for an accelerated discovery schedule." "Mr. Kim," Maya said carefully, "I think you need to see this." She handed him the folder. As David read through the documents, his expression changed from stress to amazement to something approaching shock. This changes everything," David said finally. "These documents don't just defend against Chen's claims, they expose fraud on his part." "Maya, where exactly did you find these?" "Box 47, misfiled under partnership agreements instead of litigation materials." David shook his head in wonder. "If you hadn't been so thorough in your cross-referencing system, we never would have found these. This discovery could save Sterling Enterprises hundreds of millions of dollars." That evening, Maya sat in the empty conference room, staring at the documents that had taken her all day to process and verify. She had found the smoking gun that would not only clear Alexander's name, but expose his former partner's duplicity. It was the kind of career-defining discovery that senior associates at prestigious firms worked years to achieve. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she had stumbled into something larger than a legal case. She thought about Alexander's handwritten note, about his choice to take the high road even when he had every reason to fight back. It reminded her of her mother's wisdom about strength showing itself through restraint, not retaliation. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Eleanor. "How was your first week at the new job, Mija?" Maya smiled, typing back, "Better than I could have imagined. I think I might actually be good at this." "Of course you are. I never doubted it for a second. See you at home." As Maya packed up her things, she realized she was facing a choice that would define not just this case, but her entire career. The documents she had found would undoubtedly make her a hero at Sterling Enterprises. David Kim had already hinted that her discovery could lead to a full-time position after graduation, maybe even a fast track to junior associate. But Maya also recognized the power she now held. These documents could destroy Marcus Chen's reputation and career, just as Chen had tried to destroy Alexander's company. The question was whether Maya believed in justice or revenge. The next Monday, Maya requested a meeting with Alexander Sterling. She had spent the weekend thinking about the documents, about justice, and about what kind of lawyer she wanted to become. Alexander's assistant, Jennifer, seemed surprised by the request. "Mr. Sterling is incredibly busy with the lawsuit preparations. Are you sure this can't wait or be handled through Mr. Kim?" "It's about the case," Maya said firmly. "He needs to see what I found." An hour later, Maya sat across from Alexander in his office. He looked tired, the stress of the lawsuit clearly weighing on him. When she handed him the folder, his reaction was immediate and visceral. "Where did you find these?" he asked, his voice tight. "Does it matter? The question is what you want to do with them." Alexander read through the documents again, his expression unreadable. Finally, he looked up at Maya. "You know what these mean, don't you? These documents don't just prove my innocence. They prove Marcus committed fraud. They could destroy him." "Yes," Maya said simply. "They could. And you brought them to me instead of going directly to David Kim because—" Maya took a deep breath. "Because I've read your note in that folder. I know you've been protecting Marcus Chen for years, even though he tried to steal your company. I wanted to understand why before we decide how to use this information." Alexander was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the city beyond his windows. "Marcus was my best friend," he said finally. "We started this company together in that tiny apartment I told you about. When I found out about his plan to steal everything we'd built, it broke something in me. But destroying him wouldn't have fixed what was broken. It would have made me into someone I didn't want to be. And now?" Alexander looked at Maya with something that might have been respect. "Now I have a choice to make. I can use these documents to not only win the lawsuit, but devastate the man who betrayed me. Or I can find a way to protect my company without destroying his life." Maya leaned forward. "There might be a third option." Alexander raised an eyebrow. "We present just enough of this evidence to prove your innocence and stop the lawsuit. We don't expose the extent of Chen's fraud unless he pushes forward with false claims. Give him a chance to withdraw gracefully." "You're suggesting we show mercy to someone who tried to destroy everything I've worked for?" Maya thought about her mother's chemotherapy treatments, about the nights she had worked double shifts to pay for medication, about all the times she could have taken shortcuts or compromised her integrity to make life easier. "I'm suggesting we show strength," Maya said. "The kind of strength that doesn't need to destroy others to prove its worth." Alexander stared at her for a long moment, then smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen from him since they met. "You know, Maya Rodriguez, I think you're going to make an exceptional lawyer. If you want to keep hearing stories like this that show how integrity shapes our biggest decisions, tap the red button that says subscribe. It's free and it helps me keep sharing these powerful moments that remind us who we really are." The deposition took place on a gray Tuesday morning in a sterile conference room on the 35th floor of a Manhattan law firm. Maya sat beside David Kim and the rest of Sterling's legal team, her heart pounding as she watched Marcus Chen enter the room with his attorneys. She had seen his photo in the court documents, but meeting him in person felt surreal. This was the man whose betrayal had haunted Alexander for years and whose current lawsuit threatened everything Sterling Enterprises had built. Chen was younger than Maya had expected, probably in his early 30s, with an intense demeanor and expensive suit that spoke to recent success. His eyes swept the room dismissively until they landed on Maya, lingering with obvious confusion about why a young woman in an off-the-rack suit was sitting at the defendant's table. Alexander arrived last, his presence immediately changing the energy in the room. Maya watched as his eyes met Chen's for the first time in years. The history between them was palpable. Friendship turned to betrayal, trust shattered by greed. "Marcus," Alexander said quietly, taking his seat. "Alex," Chen replied, his voice carefully neutral. "I wish it hadn't come to this." "So do I." The plaintiff's lead attorney, a sharp-faced woman named Patricia Williamson, wasted no time in beginning her questioning. For the first hour, she walked through the timeline of Sterling's founding, establishing Chen's role in developing the early technology and his contributions to the platform that would eventually connect billions of users worldwide. Maya took careful notes, cross-referencing everything against the documents she had organized. Chen's testimony was mostly accurate about the technical details, but she noticed small embellishments, moments where he claimed sole credit for innovations that the early correspondence showed were collaborative efforts. When it came time for Sterling's team to question Chen, David Kim started with standard defensive questions about the timeline and specific technical contributions. But Maya could see they were building toward the crucial moment when they would present the evidence she had discovered. During a brief recess, Maya found herself alone in the hallway with Alexander. "Are you sure about this approach?" he asked quietly. "Once we present those documents, there's no going back. Marcus's career will be over." Maya looked through the glass doors at Chen, who was huddled with his attorneys, looking confident and self-assured. She thought about all the nights she had worked herself to exhaustion while he had been plotting to steal Alexander's company. She thought about integrity, about consequences, about the difference between justice and revenge. He's still lying in there, Maya said. Even now, when he could withdraw the lawsuit and walk away, he's choosing to double down on false claims. At what point does showing mercy become enabling? Alexander nodded slowly. You're right. I've protected him for years, but I can't let him destroy innocent people to cover his own guilt. When the deposition resumed, David Kim's questioning took a sharper turn. Mr. Chen, you've testified that you developed the core algorithm that powers Sterling's platform independently, correct? That's right. And you claim that Mr. Sterling stole this algorithm and built his company on your work without compensation? Exactly. David Kim glanced at Maya, who nodded almost imperceptibly. This was the moment they had prepared for. I'd like to present Exhibit 47, David said, handing copies of an email to everyone in the room. This is an email from your account to your associate Robert Kim, dated March 15, 2014. Would you please read the highlighted section aloud? Chen's face went pale as he read the document. Maya watched his attorneys frantically scanning the pages, realizing they had never seen this evidence before. I don't recall this specific email, Chen said weakly. Allow me to read it for you, David continued. Sterling doesn't understand the legal implications of what we're building. Once we have users, I'll reveal my patents and take controlling interest. He's too trusting to see it coming. Those are your words, correct? The room fell silent, except for the sound of Chen's attorney whispering urgently in his ear. Patricia Williamson looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. This email was fabricated, Chen said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. David Kim smiled grimly and presented another document. This is the metadata analysis from your email server, provided by your own IT department during discovery. It confirms the email's authenticity. Would you like to see the dozen other emails that detail your plan to defraud Sterling Enterprises? Maya watched as Chen's carefully constructed lawsuit began to crumble around him. But instead of satisfaction, she felt something closer to sadness. This man had been Alexander's friend, his partner in building something revolutionary. Greed had turned him into someone willing to lie under oath to steal what he had once helped create. Chen's attorney called for another recess, and Maya could hear heated whispers from their side of the table. When they returned, Patricia Williamson looked defeated. My client would like to make a statement, she announced. Chen stood up, his face ashen. For a moment, Maya thought he might finally tell the truth, might salvage what remained of his integrity. Instead, he looked directly at Alexander and said, You always thought you were better than everyone else, Alex. You acted like you were doing me a favor by letting me work on your little project. Maybe I did consider taking a larger share, but that's business. You would have done the same thing. Alexander's jaw tightened, but his voice remained calm. No, Marcus, I wouldn't have. And that's the difference between us. The difference between us, Chen shot back, is that you got lucky and I didn't. But I still built half of what made you rich. I deserve compensation for that. Maya had heard enough. She stood up, surprising everyone in the room. Mr. Chen, she said, her voice clear and strong, may I ask you something? David Kim looked startled, but nodded for her to continue. You keep talking about what you deserve, about what you're owed. But what about what Alexander Sterling deserved? He deserved honesty from his business partner. He deserved loyalty from his friend. He deserved to build his company without worrying about secret patents and backstabbing conspiracies. Chen stared at her, clearly thrown by this unexpected intervention from someone he had dismissed as irrelevant. And what about what your current employees deserve? Maya continued. The people working for the company you built after leaving Sterling Enterprises, do they deserve to have their jobs threatened because their boss decided to pursue a fraudulent lawsuit based on lies? Who are you to lecture me? Chen snapped. You're just some intern who... You're right, Maya interrupted. I am just an intern. 2 months ago, I was delivering Chinese food in the rain to pay for my mother's cancer treatments. I know what it means to struggle, to sacrifice, to work for everything you have. And I would never ever compromise my integrity the way you have, no matter how desperate I became. The room was completely silent. Maya could feel everyone's eyes on her, but she kept her focus on Chen. You had a choice, Mr. Chen. When you realized Alexander's platform was going to be successful, you could have celebrated your friend's achievement. You could have been proud of your contribution to something that would connect people around the world. Instead, you chose greed. You chose betrayal, and now you're choosing to lie under oath rather than accept responsibility for your actions. Chen's face was red with anger and humiliation. You don't understand business. You don't understand what it's like to watch someone else get rich off your ideas. You're right. I don't understand that, Maya said. but I understand character. And I understand that success built on lies and betrayal isn't success at all. It's just elaborate failure waiting to be exposed. Patricia Williamson finally found her voice. Your Honor, I object to this improper questioning by... This isn't a courtroom, Alexander said quietly, standing up. And Maya Rodriguez isn't just some intern. She's the person who discovered the evidence that proves your client committed fraud. She's also one of the most principled people I've ever met. Alexander looked at Chen with something that might have been pity. Maya's right, Marcus. You had choices all along and you keep making the wrong ones. Even now, you could withdraw this lawsuit, apologize, and try to rebuild your reputation honestly. Instead, you're doubling down on lies. Chen stared at his former friend for a long moment, and Maya saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret, maybe, or recognition of what he had lost through his own choices. But the moment passed. Chen straightened his shoulders and looked at his attorney. We're not withdrawing anything. We'll see you in court. As Chen and his legal team filed out of the conference room, Alexander turned to Maya. Thank you, he said simply, for finding the truth and for having the courage to speak it. Maya looked around the room at the scattered documents that represented years of betrayal and litigation. Sometimes the truth is the only thing we have left. David Kim was already on his phone, undoubtedly calling the office with news that the case had effectively ended before reaching trial. But Maya's attention was drawn to the window, where she could see people far below hurrying through their daily lives, each carrying their own struggles and making their own choices about how to handle them. She thought about her mother, waiting at home for news about how the deposition had gone. She thought about the delivery routes she used to drive, the customers who had treated her with kindness or contempt, the moment when she had stood in Alexander's penthouse and refused to be diminished by his cruelty. Everything had led to this moment, not just the legal victory, but the realization that integrity wasn't just about making the right choice when it was easy. It was about making the right choice when it cost you something, when it would be easier to look the other way, when standing up for what was right meant standing alone. But Maya realized she wasn't standing alone anymore. She had found her place in the world, not because someone had rescued her from her circumstances, but because she had never stopped being the person her mother had raised her to be, someone who worked hard, told the truth, and never forgot that every person deserved to be treated with dignity. From whichever corner of the world you're following this story, you know that the most powerful victories aren't won in boardrooms or courtrooms. They're won in moments when we choose who we want to be. The final chapter will show you just how far courage and integrity can take someone who refuses to give up on their dreams. 6 months after the deposition, Maya Rodriguez walked across the stage at Columbia Law School's graduation ceremony, her navy blue cap and gown flowing in the gentle May breeze. In the audience, Elena Rodriguez sat in the front row, tears streaming down her face. The chemotherapy had worked. The experimental treatment that Maya's internship salary had helped fund was showing remarkable results. Elena's hair was growing back, and color had returned to her cheeks. Beside Elena sat Alexander Sterling, who had insisted on attending despite his packed schedule. When Maya's name was called, Maya Rodriguez, graduating summa cum laude, recipient of the Sterling Foundation Scholarship for Academic Excellence, he stood and applauded as proudly as any parent. The scholarship had been Alexander's idea, but Maya had initially refused it, just as she had refused his first offers of help. It was only when he explained that the foundation would support students from similar backgrounds that she had agreed, understanding that accepting help meant she could help others in return. After the ceremony, Maya found herself in the same penthouse where everything had begun, but this time as an invited guest rather than a delivery driver. The view of Central Park was just as breathtaking, but Maya saw it differently now, not as a symbol of a world she could never access, but as a reminder of how far she had traveled. I still can't believe you turned down offers from 3 different law firms to work for legal aid, Alexander said, handing Maya a glass of champagne. Maya smiled, thinking about her decision to take a position with the Legal Aid Society instead of the lucrative corporate offers she had received. I learned something important these past 2 years. Success isn't just about reaching the top, it's about who you lift up along the way. Alexander nodded, understanding in his eyes. The lawsuit with Marcus Chen had been settled out of court, with Chen finally agreeing to drop all claims in exchange for Sterling Enterprises not pursuing fraud charges. Chen's company had quietly closed 6 months later, and Chen himself had left the tech industry altogether. Alexander had taken no joy in his former friend's downfall, but Maya had watched him find peace in the resolution. Speaking of lifting people up, Alexander said, pulling out an envelope, I have something for you. Maya opened the envelope to find a check that made her eyes widen. Alexander, this is too much. I can't accept this. It's not a gift, Alexander said quickly. It's payment for consulting work. Sterling Enterprises wants to retain you as outside counsel for our new initiative. What initiative? Alexander's eyes lit up with the same passion Maya had seen when he talked about his company's early days. We're launching a program to provide legal support for small business owners and startups who can't afford traditional legal services. We need someone who understands what it means to fight for your dreams against impossible odds. Maya looked at the check again, then at Alexander. This is enough to pay off all of my mother's medical bills, and enough to set up your own practice if that's what you want. The choice is yours, Maya. It always has been. Before Maya could respond, Eleanor appeared beside them, moving with energy Maya hadn't seen in years. Mija, Elena said in Spanish, there's someone here who wants to meet you. Maya turned to see a young woman, maybe 19 years old, wearing a food delivery company uniform. She looked nervous but determined, clutching a graduation card in her hands. Ms. Rodriguez, the young woman said hesitantly, I'm Sarah Kim. I deliver for Food Fast, and I heard about your story. I'm starting college in the fall, and I just wanted to say thank you for showing people like us that we matter. Maya felt tears prick her eyes. She took the card from Sarah's hands and read the simple message. Thank you for proving that dreams don't have expiration dates. What are you studying? Maya asked. Pre-med. I want to be a doctor, but my family thinks it's impossible. We don't have money for medical school, and I'm working full-time just to pay for community college. Maya looked at Alexander, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Sarah, Maya said, have you heard of the Sterling Foundation Scholarship Program? That evening, Maya and Elena sat on their small balcony in their new apartment, a modest two-bedroom in Queens that felt like a palace compared to their old studio. Elena was reading, her hair catching the golden light of the sunset, looking healthier than she had in years. Are you happy, Mija? Elena asked, closing her book. Maya considered the question. She thought about the path that had led her here, from law school to delivery routes to corporate offices and back to serving people who needed her most. She thought about the moment in Alexander's penthouse when she had refused to be diminished, not knowing it would change both their lives. I'm proud, Maya said finally. I'm proud of the work I do, proud of the choices I've made, proud of the person I've become. And yes, Mama, I'm happy. Elena smiled. Your father would be proud too, you know, wherever he is. Maya had learned to make peace with her father's absence, understanding that his inability to handle responsibility said nothing about her worth. She had built her strength not from his presence, but from his absence, from watching her mother work multiple jobs with dignity, from learning that love meant staying when things got difficult. I know, Maya said, but I had the parent I needed. I had you. 3 blocks away, Alexander Sterling sat in his home office, reading through applications for the Sterling Foundation's second round of scholarships. Each application told a story of struggle and determination, students working multiple jobs, supporting families, chasing dreams that seemed impossible from the outside. On his desk was a framed photo from Maya's graduation ceremony, showing her with Elena and him, all 3 of them laughing at something Elena had said. It was the first photo Alexander had displayed in his office that wasn't related to business, and it reminded him daily that success was measured not just in stock prices and quarterly reports, but in the lives you touched along the way. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Just met with Sarah Kim. She got the scholarship. You should have seen her face when I told her. Thank you for making this possible. Alexander smiled and typed back. Thank you for reminding me why we do this work in the first place. He looked out at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the darkness, thinking about all the people working night shifts, studying by lamplight, delivering food through traffic and rain, chasing dreams that others might dismiss as impossible. 2 years ago, he had been blind to their struggles, insulated by wealth from the realities of working-class life. Maya Rodriguez had changed that, not just by delivering his dinner on a rainy Tuesday night, but by refusing to let him ignore her humanity. She had forced him to see past job titles and uniforms to the person underneath, someone with dreams, talents, struggles, and an unshakable sense of dignity. The next morning, Maya walked into the Legal Aid Society's offices for her first day as a staff attorney. The building was old and crowded, the opposite of Sterling Tower's gleaming luxury, but Maya felt more at home here than she had ever felt in corporate surroundings. Her first client was a single mother facing eviction, Her second was an immigrant worker whose employer was withholding wages, and her third was an elderly man trying to understand Medicare regulations. Each case represented someone who needed an advocate, someone whose problems might seem small to wealthy lawyers, but were life-altering to the people experiencing them. As Maya worked through her caseload, she thought about the delivery routes she used to drive, the customers who had treated her with kindness or contempt, the night she had stood in Alexander's kitchen and refused to accept his dismissal. Every experience had prepared her for this moment, not just the legal knowledge she had gained, but the understanding that came from living on the margins, from knowing what it meant to work for everything you had. Her phone rang, and she was surprised to see Alexander's name on the screen. "Maya, I hope I'm not interrupting your first day." "Of course not. What's going on?" "I wanted you to be the first to know. Sterling Enterprises just announced a new initiative. We're partnering with delivery companies to provide education benefits and legal support for gig workers. Full college tuition coverage for drivers who meet certain criteria." Maya felt her throat tighten with emotion. "Alexander, that's incredible. It was your idea, actually. That night when you told me about working delivery to support your mother and your education, it made me realize how many talented people are out there, working jobs that don't reflect their potential simply because they don't have access to opportunities." Maya looked around the legal aid office, at the clients waiting in hard plastic chairs, at the attorneys working at overloaded desks, at the bulletin board covered with success stories and thank you notes from people whose lives had been changed by legal advocacy. "You know what's funny?" Maya said. 2 years ago, I thought success meant escaping this world, moving up to something bigger and more prestigious. Now I realize that the most important work happens right here, with people who need someone to believe in them." "Maybe that's what I learned from you," Alexander said. "That real success isn't about climbing higher, it's about reaching back to help others climb with you." After hanging up, Maya returned to her work, but she couldn't stop smiling. She thought about Sarah Kim, who would become a doctor because someone believed in her potential. She thought about her mother, healthy and proud in the audience at graduation. She thought about all the delivery drivers who would benefit from Alexander's new program, and all the clients she would serve in her career as a legal aid attorney. Most of all, she thought about the woman she had become, not despite her struggles, but because of them. Every challenge had made her stronger. Every setback had taught her resilience. Every moment of being underestimated had reinforced her determination to prove that worth isn't measured by circumstances, but by character. Maya Rodriguez had started as someone society tried to make invisible, dismissed as just a delivery girl, by a man who confused wealth with value. But she had refused to be diminished, and in standing up for her own dignity, she had reminded both herself and Alexander Sterling what really mattered. She had transformed not just her own life, but his as well. And in the end, that transformation had created ripples that would touch countless other lives. Students who would receive scholarships, workers who would gain access to education, clients who would receive legal representation, and anyone who needed a reminder that every person's dreams deserve respect. The delivery girl had become a lawyer. The billionaire had remembered his humanity, and together they had proven that the most powerful changes begin with the courage to see each other clearly, not through the lens of status or circumstance, but through the truth of who we really are. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that every person you meet is fighting battles you can't see and chasing dreams that deserve respect, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes a single story can change how we see the world and how we treat the people in it.